Welcome to the Make a Mental Note podcast, where mental health professionals share information and perspectives that illuminate, educate, and is worthy of a mental note. And now your host, Chris Quarto.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Make a Mental Note podcast. My mental health tip for today has to do with coping with pressure. No doubt you've experienced pressure from time to time, which is basically having to do too much in too short a period of time. And, some people feel like their brains are going to explode when this happens. And so there are a few things that you might want to try if this happens to you. First, consider if there's anything that you can cut out from your life that's contributing to pressure. There are certain stressors that you might not have much control over and just have to deal with, but there may be other things that demand your time, yet you can choose to cut out of your life entirely, or maybe just place on the back burner while you're dealing with more pressing matters. Secondly, think about creating a list of priorities, kind of like a to-do list, and then numbering them in order of importance and working your way through the list. It gives you a feeling of accomplishment when you cross things off your list, and also helps take the pressure off. Another thing, which is kind of related to the first point, is to set boundaries for yourself, which might mean not checking emails or answering phone calls when you arrive home from work or school at night. And then finally, break down large tasks into smaller tasks and knock out the small tasks little by little. It's amazing how much more manageable things seem when you scale things down into bite-sized chunks. So that's my mental health tip for today. The podcast interview today is with Jean Landphair, and without further ado, here is Jean. Hi everyone, this is Chris Quarto, and welcome again to the Make a Mental Note podcast. Well, today I am joined by Jean Landphair, who is a private practice counselor, which focuses on marriage and family therapy. And Jean, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, tell the Make a Mental Note audience a little bit about who you are and what you do for a living.
Yes, I am. I do counseling in the marriage and family therapy area part-time. I've been married myself for a long time, have raised children, and now have grandchildren. So I've experienced the whole gamut of the family life cycle. I work also part-time at Walnut House, which is a residential treatment center in Murfreesboro for men who struggle with addictions and another diagnosable mental illness.
Fantastic.
So that's what I do.
I'm kind of curious. You said that you're a mom and a grandma. I wonder how much those experiences of being a parent helps you in your role in doing marriage and family therapy.
Oh, it's a tremendous resource for me. I started out feeling called to counseling as a teenager, and my first job in the field after I majored in psychology was just a disaster, so I thought maybe I had heard the calling wrong and I went in a different direction. But now I see that I was not prepared at that time. But to have the experience of having a long-term marriage and raising children and being a grandma, it just brings a tremendous amount of information and perspective, I think, to what I do.
Yeah, and I found that same thing too. When I first got into the field, I was working a lot with kids and adolescents, and I think I did a decent job, but it was a lot different once I became a dad, and went through all those growing pains of my own kids, and I think you're right. I think it gives you a different perspective on things. I'm not sure it makes you a better therapist, but it certainly does give you a different perspective, doesn't it?
Well, I always feel like we don't get very good training about how to be a parent. A lot of us don't. We kind of figure it out as we go along. And so by the time we're done, we sort of have it down.
Yes.
So it's nice that I can use my experiences, hopefully to support other people in what they're trying to do.
I always like to tease my oldest son, my oldest child about, he was the experiment, and he looks back in that and said, I'm not sure I really appreciate being the experiment, Dad, but, that's kind of funny when you look back at those things. So it sounds like...
My husband likes to say that our kids turned out pretty well in spite of us.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's true. Fortunately, children are very resilient, and they can endure lots of mistakes by their parents as long as they just know their parents really love them and accept them for who they are. That's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah, that's a good
parents
point.
Don't have to be perfect to be good parents.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
That's true.
Because none of us are perfect.
Well, that's true. So you knew for a long time that you wanted to go into this field, huh?
Yes, I did. I did sense a calling to that, and like I say, I really wasn't ready until my kids were grown and gone. We moved here in 2008 after our children were grown and gone, so we moved here without children, and after I'd spent many, many years at home as a homemaker, and I knew I wanted to do something worthwhile for the rest of my life. I felt like raising my kids was the best thing I'd ever done, but I didn't want it to be the last good thing I'd done.
Yeah.
And so I was inspired to get back on that counseling track, and then I went to Trevecca Nazarene University to get my master's in marriage and family therapy. And so I've had my private practice open for almost 5 years now.
Okay. Well, how did you know that counseling was the area? Because, I mean, there are a lot of different ways you can help people. I mean, you could have been a nurse, you could have been a teacher, a counselor. Yeah. Why did you think that counseling was the way for you to go, Jean?
Well, I think because I had some experiences as a teenager that opened up my emotional world and showed me that, I guess, a healthier way of being. And I mean, it just changed my life so much that I wanted to be that catalyst for other people in their lives.
Yeah, so some of those, I think, we've talked about this many times on the podcast for therapists who, I've interviewed, that past personal experiences certainly seem to play a role in a lot of people's decision to go into the profession. So it sounds like, for you, that's the case as well.
Absolutely, and my husband and I have been through marriage counseling ourselves, and it was just a life-changing experience for me. So for much of my private practice, I really focused on couples counseling because my passion is for healthy marriages and healthy families.
Okay. Well, so in your practice in working with couples, what types of themes or stories do you find that underlie their problems? That they're coming in, they're having these issues. What kind of commonalities do you see in the issues that are discussed with them?
For me, the bottom line that I see all the time is a lack of secure attachment or bonding. You might think of it in terms of a bonding.
Okay.
As people, we are created for relationship. We're created for connection to other people. Scientists have discovered that our brains actually are hardwired to long for this. And from the time we're a baby, our very first baby action is to cry and draw in connection to our main caregiver. And many of the behaviors of a baby are designed to draw in the connection with the main caregiver, because without that bond, without someone who's really devoted to that baby will not survive.
Okay.
And as a baby grows into a child and can care for themselves physically, that longing for an emotional attachment never goes away. It's throughout our whole life, from the cradle to the grave. But many of us don't get that sense of secure attachment. And I'll kind of define it better for you. If I feel securely attached to someone, then I believe that person is available for me when I need them.
I see.
That they're responsive to me when I express a need, and that they're emotionally engaged with me. Ideally, we want that from our parents. We don't always get that. When we grow up, we look for it in maybe a best buddy, a roommate, and when we get married, we want our spouse to be that for us. Unfortunately, if a person comes into a marriage never having experienced that sense of secure attachment, they don't know how to ask for their needs to be met. They don't know how to be emotionally engaged with someone, and maybe they don't know how to receive it, even if someone is giving that to them. So to me, that's the source of every marital problem I've seen.
Yeah. So people are seeking out that bonding or that attachment to another person, and that goes on throughout the life cycle, from what I hear
It
you
does.
saying. And
Yes, and it's very counterculture in Western civilization. We very much idealize independence, handling things ourselves, being strong, being tough. You know, we hear these phrases like the self-made man. I brought myself up by my own bootstraps.
Right.
And so we almost are made to feel like we're weak and immature if we need other people. And in fact, that's just the opposite. To be able to need someone and ask for it in a healthy way and get it back in a healthy way, it's comforting. It makes us feel secure. It keeps us from being lonely. It gives us the confidence to launch out and try new things and be risky a little bit. Because we know if we fall flat on our face, that secure person will still love us, still accept us just the way we are.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of this goes back, I guess, to the very first attachment that a person has is with their caregiver. Typically, it's going to be the parent. And why is it that some parents have difficulty attaching to their child? Any guesses along those lines?
Well, we don't really have to guess. They're acting out of their own brokenness.
Uh-huh.
You know, it gets passed on generation to generation unless something happens to interrupt that, generally speaking. If I'm a parent and I haven't had a sense of secure attachment, pretty tough to pass that along to my child. I am in a place that I'm always needy and either I've built a wall around my heart and told myself, okay, I don't need people. It's too risky to reach out. I just get hurt, so I'll just live my life in loneliness behind this wall. It's safer. I can take care of myself better than other people. That's one response to an insecure attachment. Another typical response to insecure attachment is someone who is constantly trying to get someone else's attention and affection. And that person looks to others like they're very needy. They may look demanding, critical, controlling, because they don't know how to ask for attention or attachment in a healthy way. So we see those two very predictable responses to insecure attachment. And then there might be somebody who has a mix. So they may try to reach out for people and long for that, but as soon as they engage someone and someone starts to come close, then they get scared, say, oh, too close, back off, I need my space, and they run and hide behind their wall again. And that kind of person is very confusing to someone else in a relationship. So we see these three styles, we call them attachment styles, three typical ways that people respond to insecure attachment. And that's what I deal with in marriage counseling quite a lot, helping people to gain a sense of secure attachment with their partner. And the good news is, if we haven't experienced secure attachment as a child, we can, as an adult, in a healthy relationship with someone else who is securely attached.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So going back to the parent, if the parent had not experienced secure attachment themselves, then how could you expect them to show any kind of a strong attachment to their own child? Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah, you can't, short of therapy or a life-changing experience in a healthy relationship with someone else who's securely attached, or a spiritual experience that makes them feel securely attached.
So when you're working with couples and they're dealing with these types of issues, what kind of feelings are they experiencing, or what kind of feelings do you talk about as part of this process in couples counseling?
Mm-hmm. Well, the person who moves towards attachment and always trying to, get attention for themselves, that person generally is paired with someone who's more shut down and hiding behind the wall. Often I see this. And the person who's reaching out more for attachment and finding this person just shut down and not responding will tell themselves, well, this person doesn't really care about me. I don't really exist for them. I don't count. I don't matter.
I see.
And that really hurts. And so it kind of rubs their raw spot and makes them try even harder to reach out, and usually not in a very healthy way.
So there could be... Oh, go ahead.
The person who's hiding behind the wall will tell themselves, my partner, he just keeps, coming at me, is so critical, so demanding nothing I ever do is good enough. Maybe I'm not enough. And they feel a sense of rejection. I'm not enough. And so that causes them to, hide behind that wall even more. And so we get this cycle going, that it's just a never-ending negative downward spiral.
Right.
And so that's what we attempt to interrupt in therapy.
Okay. It sounds like part of what you do is to try to draw out how each person in this relationship kind of perceives the situation or perceives the other person, and maybe they're misinterpreting the other person's behaviors in some situations. Do you find that to be the case?
Absolutely. When they get stuck in this negative cycle that I just kind of explained, the cycle skews their perception and tells them really lies. I mean, the person who's reaching for connection, they're doing that because that other person matters so much to them. And yet this other person is telling themselves, I'm not enough for my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who's hiding behind the wall, they're hiding behind that wall because it's too hurtful to be in connection with somebody I care so much about and feel rejected. It's not that I don't care about this person. If I didn't care so much about my partner, it wouldn't hurt so much to feel rejected.
I see.
And so, yes, the cycle really skews their perception and makes them believe what's not true about their partner.
So what appears on the surface to be some sort of a real negative type of behavior, if you look at the function of the behavior, it may be serving a positive purpose to perhaps to protect the person from hurt or pain or maybe some other reasons.
Yeah. In fact, the person that's reaching out that feels kind of critical or demanding or controlling, I call that behavior protest. It's protest behavior. It's protesting a lack of connection from that other person who they feel is cutting them off.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's protest. They just long for connection so much because that person means so much to them, and it's really hurtful to see that person shut down and not letting them in. So a lot of what I do is helping people to access their deep emotions and process it in healthy ways, and then to be able to connect with other people in healthy ways.
Yeah, I guess part of that is helping them access those deep emotions and to have a discussion about them. What do you think these emotions are telling you? What do you think these emotions are all about? Where do you think they're coming from? And I guess you can get a lot of rich information from talking about emotions, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, that's most of what I do. And what keeps people stuck in their role in this negative cycle is their raw spots. It's some emotional wound they've had in the past. It's been a very big deal, and it impacts them greatly. And now in the present, anytime they perceive a threat that feels the least little bit like that old big deal, even though the current threat is just a little thing, all the emotions from the past come up and just flood their mind so that their rational part of their brain never gets a chance to kick in. And that's what keeps a couple stuck in this negative cycle. So a key thing for me is helping them heal those emotional wounds from the past so they don't have such a huge impact on the present.
That's a great point. I mean, when you say those emotional wounds from the past, so it's almost as if people have these emotions, perhaps based on the insecure attachment that you were talking about earlier, things that happened a long time ago, maybe even pre-verbally, and they kind of build their personalities and their selves around these emotions. And when they get older, as adults, they get into these relationships, and they're experiencing these same types of emotions, maybe that they had when they were infants or toddlers, but they're experiencing them as adults, and it must be so confusing for them to figure out, why am I feeling this way?
Yes. Anytime we overreact emotionally to a small thing, that's a clue that our emotions are tapping into some deep wound from the past. I'll give you an easy example. I know of a woman whose husband worked retail at a store on a mall. She often worked evening and weekend hours. She had an 8-to-5 job, and so found herself often alone in evenings and weekends. And this woman had an insecure attachment due to upbringing where she did not feel like her parents were emotionally engaged to her. So even though they cared for her physically, she felt kind of abandoned on an emotional level. So this abandonment is a real raw spot for her. So every time her husband is not there in the evening or weekend, she has to go by herself to this or that, or she tells herself, he must not care for me. His job is more important to me. He wouldn't leave me alone like this if he really loved me. And so she overreacts emotionally and gets upset and cries and feels alone and abandoned, where he's just trying to provide for her. It's his way of loving her.
Right.
And so that's how her raw spots really impacts how she responds to this current day event.
Right. Isn't that interesting how those attachments can portray themselves in adult relationships and, make a person respond this way or, feel this way toward their partner. I think it's just a fascinating, to work with couples and to look at how those early attachments really play a large role into current problems.
Yeah. It is, and one thing I do is, I help them try to identify their attachment wounds from the past and how it impacts them now, and I encourage them, be in touch with your own raw spots, because our partners rub our raw spots without knowing it. They don't, most of the time don't mean to. And so if we're in touch with our own raw spots, and when it gets rubbed, we can say to our partner, hey, I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but this felt a little bit like da-da-da from the past, and it hurt me because da-da-da. Just letting them know, I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but this kind of rubbed an old wound for me, and I just need you to know that. And so when a partner knows what our raw spots are, instead of rubbing them, they can help us protect them.
Okay.
And when we know our partner's raw spots and we see, I rubbed that raw spot, I didn't mean to, we can quickly repair that and say, hey, I sense, maybe I rubbed this raw spot of yours when I did this, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I really love you, and they can move into comfort. When we show ourselves to be vulnerable to somebody and they show themselves to be there for us, comforting, then that's a bonding experience. And as we have more and more of those bonding experiences, our relationship can heal and we can become securely attached. So that's kind of the long-term goal.
Yeah, and I guess I was going to ask you about that. So now that we have an understanding of what some of the issues are that couples experience that come in to see you, how is it that you get them from point A, from the point where they're originally coming in to see you in distress and in these problems, to point B where they're functioning better, they have a more secure attachment? How do you move them from point A to point B? I mean, I think you were just talking about a little bit, but is there anything more that goes into helping them through that process?
Well, I use a model called emotionally focused therapy, and one of the first things I will do is try to figure out what is the negative cycle that goes on. How does it get started? What's the trigger? What are each person's perceptions about what's happening? What are they telling themselves? How do they feel about on the surface? And then dig a little deeper. What's, the deep emotion that maybe they're not in touch with? And what's your raw spot that gets rubbed when this thing starts and it keeps you stuck? And so we just try to kind of unpack all of that to get understanding. And then in session, it's a matter of every time an emotion comes up, help them to try to process that at a little deeper level in the presence of the partner and try to help the partner respond in a way that's comforting, that feels secure. And so we just try to get a little bonding happening more and more each time. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the process that it goes through.
So part of what you're doing is you're helping them gain awareness of a couple of things. Their past, their own families, and their histories, and perhaps how they've developed some of these either styles of relating or the reasons that they respond the way that they do. And then you had talked about triggers and those raw emotions, those raw spots or raw feelings that they might have, and how their partner might be triggering some of those things. And to have conversations about these things over a course of however long therapy proceeds, so they can get to the point of becoming so aware of their partners and perhaps responding in different ways that encourage more of that bonding and strong attachment to one another.
Yes. And awareness is important, but even more important is helping clients have a different kind of emotional experience with each other in session.
I see.
So instead of experiencing my partner as being critical and attacking or withdrawn and cold and shut down, when I share my deep emotion with my partner, now I find, hey, that person is there for me. They still accept me. They're showing love. They're showing comfort. They're showing affection. This is a different experience. This is really cool. I like this.
Uh-huh.
So we try to set up situations where that will happen time and time and time again.
Sure.
To kind of replace the old negative cycle.
And I suspect that part of that process is what we were talking about before in terms of helping couples understand how they interpret or perceive one another's behaviors. And in some situations, they might be perceiving those behaviors inaccurately, and perhaps helping them have a different take on those behaviors might help them have a different emotional experience that encourages more the bonding and attachment.
Yeah, it can. But the key is really the emotional healing, because when humans perceive a threat, we react from our deep emotion first.
Uh-huh.
The rational part of our brain kicks in a little bit later.
Okay.
And if the threat has, triggered some deep emotional hurt, we get so flooded with emotion that the rational part never gets a chance to kick in. So I can teach communication skills and give people awareness all day long, but if their deep emotion isn't healed, they can't even access that information when they threat,
Yeah.
So getting the deep emotion healed is really key, and then helping to use the awareness and knowledge they now have to make it to be better relationship partners.
That makes total sense. Now, what are some of the challenges that you found in working with couples, Jane?
Well, there are three kinds of couples for whom emotionally focused therapy does not work. And unfortunately, I get these a lot. One is a couple where one has already emotionally bowed out of the marriage, but they're coming to couples counseling so they can tell themselves, I did everything I could to save the marriage, and now I can leave guilt-free.
Right.
In order for emotionally focused therapy to work, both partners have to be committed to the relationship.
Okay.
Another difficult couple that I see sometimes is where one feels like, you fix my partner will be cool. They are totally not open at all to looking at their part in the problem and changing their heart.
Right.
Really, those are the two situations into which it does not work. If a person holds on to their own perception, they're hard-hearted, they're not willing to open whatsoever their hearts and let themselves be changed, I don't have any magic wand. I can't fix that.
Yes.
So the other criteria for emotionally focused therapy to work is both people have to be willing to look at themselves and let themselves be changed and let their hearts be softened. Yeah.
So really, it kind of reminds me of the stages of change model that, unless you're prepared and ready and willing to change, that really nothing can help you make the changes that are important in improving your functioning as a couple.
Yes, you're right. And surveys show us that the average couple who presents for marriage counseling has been aware they've had trouble for 7 years.
Wow.
And so it's no surprise to me that many couples who come are not open for change. I mean, there's been so much hurt, so much water under the bridge. They've hardened their hearts so much that it's really tough.
Is there anything that you found to help a person who's really not invested to kind of buy into it, maybe to give it a try? Is there anything that you found that might help along those lines, Jane?
Well, the reason they're shut down is they have no hope.
Uh-huh.
And, I can try to give them the statistics, like emotionally focused therapy helps about 75% of the couples that go through it. Of course, the couples in the studies are screened, to make sure that they're open to therapy. I can tell them, your problems are solvable. I see the pattern. I see what needs to be changed. We can work on this. But ultimately, if they don't want to, or if they just are so hopeless, they're just not even open to the information. I can't. There's nothing I can do for them.
Yeah.
They have to want it. I
Yep.
can't do it for them.
Yep, that's tough. It's and you hate to see that as a therapist, because you want to help everybody if you can, but obviously they have to be ready and willing to participate in the process. So, well,
yes, and when I was new at this, of course, I thought I can help everybody. I have this awesome new tool. I have all this experience in my life, and I would get people that were obviously hopeless, and I would hang in there as long as they were willing to keep coming, and it just became, and then I got to a place of being hopeless, and it just got really negative for me. So I screen couples very vigorously. If I feel like one is already out, I will tell them, if one of you have already kind of decided you're out, this won't work, and you'll be wasting your money and my time. And I tell them this requires two people who are both willing to look at yourself and see what your role is in this and change. If that's not present here, I can't help you. And so they kind of winnow themselves out pretty quickly then.
Yeah. Is the screening process, is that just like a one session deal, or could it be several sessions?
I start over the phone, and if they still want to proceed, then they come. And usually after 2 or 3 sessions, if I feel like they're not a good candidate, I'll repeat that several times, and they kind of get the message and stop coming.
Yeah.
I never want to be that counselor who said, you guys just need to get a divorce, you're hopeless. I never want to be that person. It's not my call. It's their call, not mine. And so I never say that. But I do want to be realistic, and I want to respect their time and money.
Sure.
And I want to respect my own emotional health too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're hopeless.
Yeah, you'll learn that, don't you? As you get into this field and start doing this stuff, you have to learn how to kind of take care of yourself as a therapist.
Yes. In fact, I will share this with you. Even though all my training has been couples, and that's most of what I've done here in the last few months, I've stopped taking couples because I've had a major loss in my life, and my husband and I lost our son about a year ago. He was killed in Afghanistan.
Oh, boy.
And I find that I don't have the emotional energy to deal with couples at the moment. So I still do extremely focused therapy. I will work with individuals who are struggling in their marriage, who want to look at themselves. And I still get a fair amount of those. In fact, a lot of people who call for couple counseling, initially, before, I would have to talk them into bringing their spouse. A lot of times they just wanted to come by themselves. So that's the type of clients that I see at the moment.
Right.
People with anxiety, depression, all of that. I feel like is very attached to base also.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your son. And certainly you were aware of what kind of an impact that had on you, not only personally, but professionally. And it sounds like you took steps to do what you needed to do in your professional career, at least at this point, and you're doing what you need to do.
Yes, I find that interestingly enough, I've become, I think, a much better therapist on a one-on-one basis because it's made me so compassionate to people who are hurting, and I so do not want them to hurt alone.
Right.
That's
Right.
the first thing. My family and I were just surrounded by so many loving people, and which is an attachment lesson to me because it comforted us and strengthened us and made it so much easier to bear when we're surrounded by loving people.
Oh, sure.
And I never want somebody to hurt alone.
Right.
And it also made me so much more able to sit with people in their pain.
Right.
Like, it's very easy for me to do now. Before I knew I needed to do it, it was a clinical technique that I made myself do, but now it comes very naturally.
Okay.
You can sit with people in their pain and just be a comfort for them.
Well, Jean, this last part of the interview is what I refer to as the make a mental note. And it's something that you feel is important for the audience to make a mental note of in terms of, just improving their mental health or their relationships. Do you have a tip or a suggestion or words of wisdom that might help an audience member improve their mental wellness or relationships?
Yeah. I think the bottom line for me, Chris, is to remember that we were created for connection, and don't try to do life alone. We weren't designed for that. If you find yourself alone, try to find at least one other person in your life who you can trust, who's safe, who will care for you regardless of what happens, and start sharing your inner life with them, little pieces at a time, and check and see if they're trustworthy, if they still care for you and accept you. And little by little start sharing your inner life with someone else, and be someone who can be a good listener and hear other people's, inner life when they want to express it, and who will be supportive and caring. To me, that's kind of the bottom line about a healthy, happy life.
Yeah, it all gets back to attachment and bonding and connection, doesn't it?
It does, and we also, from my perspective, God is the ultimate attachment figure. Sometimes there's absolutely no one in our life that we feel is safe, but God is always there, and He is always a safe attachment figure. Now, I believe that He designed us to long for not only Him, but also other people, and His best plan for us is to be in relationship with other people. But sometimes it's just not possible.
Right. Yeah, that's good words of wisdom there. Well, Jean, if somebody is interested in contacting you for therapy sessions, how could they get a hold of you?
My office number is 615-785-5107. And I have a website that really can give people a lot of good information about what I do and who I am. And it's my last name, Landphair, Land, and then the fair part is a Phair.
Okay.
So it's landfaircounseling.com. That's my website. And I think it gives a lot of good information about what they can expect from me and also how to connect with me and get started if they want to do that.
And you're located in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Is that correct?
That's right. My office is on Dow Street, which is one block behind Highland where the old hospital used to be.
Okay. Well, Jean, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. You've really shared some great information, and I think that the audience will really appreciate everything that you've shared.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. It's been fun.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I appreciate Jean coming on the Make a Mental Note podcast today to share her perspectives on couples counseling. And I think for the mental notes takeaway, it's quite simple. The quality of attachments early in life affects the quality of relationships later in life. And that actually leads me to my question for today. Let's say that a man experienced an insecure attachment with his parents when he was younger, and now as an adult, he and his wife have a weak emotional bond. What has to happen in couples counseling in order for the couple to strengthen their bond? Well, Jean said that when one person in a relationship makes himself vulnerable and the other person is there for him and is comforting, then this helps solidify the bond between those people. And relationships heal as the number of these types of bonding experiences increase. So that's great food for thought. Well, if you'd like the show notes from today's episode, please visit my website, chrisquarto.com. And you can find information about Jean. Her website address and her phone number are there. Also, I know I've said this before, but if you like the Make a Mental Note podcast, continue to spread the word. Get the word out to people that you work with, that you're going to school with, especially if you're in a helping profession, or people that you're friends with. And also, I mentioned last week that I would be putting together a Facebook page for the Make a Mental Note podcast, and that's still in the works. So be on the lookout for that. Other than that, have a great rest of the week.